simulation live. So this is something that we are very, very excited about coming out within Creo. So what this offers is real-time simulation capabilities directly in a CAD environment. So similar story to Render Studio, there was someone who is best in class with simulation, which is ANSYS. They are best in class simulation capabilities. We brought those capabilities into Creo Parametric, and that allows engineers to rapidly explore and understand any of the impact their design changes are having on top of a simulation. So a few words of background information on this. What challenges were we hearing from customers, where we're coming from with this. One of those being just analysis is just too time consuming to do, especially in early stages. Models are in a constant state of change. Engineers are going to have to rely on their experience and intuition a lot of the time to be able to make any design or critical design decisions, or just design decisions in general. You don't have time to keep communicating with an analyst to determine what's going to be better or worse when you're doing these constant changes over and over again. There's just limited support for that analysis-led design and optimization. Many times we're seeing this as something that only an expert can do, analysis, and it's mostly just done in the late stage of the development cycle. It's expensive to do some of those high-end analysis, especially if you're using like some very high-end tools like ANSYS. You can't just keep going back and forth very early in the design stage and wasting the time doing some of those early analysis options there. And if we're not doing analysis, we might be relying on late-stage physical prototyping for our testing. And these prototypes are, again, just kind of used as a validation for my design. We're not going back and forth with these prototypes a lot of time. It's just saying, is the design working? What's not working? Let's go fix that. But it's not necessarily leading to a better way to design, especially early in that design process. So we hope to bridge that gap with the Creo Simulation Live capabilities. So those bring the simulation environment directly into our Creo environment. Again, we worked with ANSYS that has best-in-class simulation capabilities. Incorporated that technology into Creo Parametric to put this at the hands of the engineers who would be using the software. The whole goal here is to remove the barrier between our computer-aided design and the computer-aided engineering environments. So unify the design and simulation environments. It's designed to be easy to use. It's directly within Creo, working off the same common data model. So it's just working off your Creo design model. You're even just in the same design atmosphere. If you're familiar with Creo, you'd be familiar with the atmosphere you'd be working with this extension, and offers the ability to give instantaneous results and feedback. If I modify this model over here, change the dimensions associated with this, lengthen this out, remove the bracket over here, I will see this thing updated in real time. It's not going to take 10 minutes to run a simulation of this. It will update in real time. This works with the common consistent Creo user interface. So anyone who's familiar with Creo can be able to pick this up and be able to apply loads and constraints and then start to see any of the impact that their design changes are having directly onto our model. If you're familiar with ANSYS' solution that did something similar, they developed ANSYS discovery simulation. So that was the same idea of we're going to update the model and have our simulation update in real time. What they didn't have was best-in-class capabilities for parametric or direct modeling. So they worked with us to be able to incorporate basically what their discovery simulation does into Creo Parametric. So you have best of both worlds. You have an ANSYS simulation that's going to be driving in the background, and you also have parametric and editing capabilities from within Creo to actually change and model your actual design. This allows us to explore a few different types of analysis that we can look at: linear, structural, thermal, and modal analysis. And the analysis will always change based off of any changes to the model as well as material changes. So it's really focused on multiple different what-if scenarios I want to explore and be able to do this very quickly and be able to see the exact impacts of any change I have. This is brand new technology powered by ANSYS. So this is actually working off of our GPU rather than the CPU. So this is kind of a brand new concept that they came out with. This allows the simulation to go a lot faster than it would traditionally. It's not just working in the background on that computer, the CPU on your computer. It's using that GPU to drive the actual graphic of your design. This does require a special NVIDIA graphics card, which I'll go into at the end of the demonstration here, but that's the only hardware restriction that you're looking at for this particular module. So now onto what this can actually do. We'll look at a quick demonstration of this as well. So for this particular demonstration, we're going to be looking at a guitar effects pedal. So for anyone who doesn't know what this is, This is just going to be a casing for something that a musician is going to step on to alter the sound of their guitar. So traditionally, since this is going to be something that someone's going to stomp on, it's going to be made out of something slightly durable. It might be bent sheet metal. You know, you don't really have to, this might even be something that you actually simulate. You just want to make it out of sheet metal so it stands up. You don't have to want to waste time on simulating this. It's just a case for something. But I want to make sure that it's actually going to withstand the stomping by the musician if we're using this, maybe with another type of material. Maybe I want to make this a little bit cheaper. We're going to make it out of ABS this time, maybe 3D print it. I want to see if the same design is going to work with that new material consideration, or if I need to make any kind of modifications. And as I make those modifications, let's see the simulation update in real time. So I can go over to my Live Simulate tab. So this is where I can access all the simulation live functionality. Choose what mode we're going to be into, structural, thermal, modal. Set up our constraints, apply different loads, and anyone who's familiar with Creo Simulate, once again, will probably be very familiar with this overall process, but even if you're not familiar with it, it's very simple. As you can see, the dialogues there aren't very complicated. Apply my constraint, maybe just apply a simple force. Let's just apply a straight down force on the top there, then start the simulation. And as soon as you click the start simulation button, it's going to start to build that simulation out for you. And basically that's how fast it is. It just updates and generates the simulation on top of your actual model. So immediately see those results displayed. And not just one set of results. You know, I had this set to deformation, but we could very easily just toggle to my von Mises, and then the update is going to be made right in front of us. So this just shows the speed of that simulation live. I don't have to wait for the results to be processed. I can just view the results, you know, really as soon as I start that simulation. Now, the real power here isn't just, okay, let's get a quick simulation out. The real power is, how do I view this, and what does it look like when it's updated if I make a model change onto this? So maybe I'm looking over my von Mises stress. I see that it's not really in the, maybe it's not in an acceptable range. I need to lower that stress down a little bit. That's pretty easy. We can go through and start adding in some additional Creo features to be able to, you know, beef that up a little bit. Go back over to my model tab. You can see we're still within our actual Creo environment, even though the simulation is still viewed on the screen. Maybe add in a user-defined feature. Put some references, you know, just do our standard Creo work to be able to apply this onto my model. And as soon as we place the feature on, it's going to update my simulation right in front of me. So you can already see the simulation updated around the feature I just placed into. Maybe you can see some new stress concentrators. You can also see my von Mises stress has been updated. If I want to make sure, go do a few more changes, maybe just mirror this thing across, you know, just doing my typical design work, exploring this out a little bit. But again, as soon as I make that change, we can start to see my simulation start to develop even more here. And we could always go back to my simulation display options that are right on my toolbar there and see if there's any new options for this. We could also update the simulation at any time. So add in some more constraints, let it load for half a second, and it starts to update my simulation once again. So not just some model updates that we're going to be doing, also updates over to the initial simulation we have set. You know, look at my deformation, look at my von Mises stress, and this determine if this is going to be more acceptable than what we had. So already with those two bosses in those locations, you can see my stress went up a little bit, but it's no longer at the exact same location. The load is off the front face of that, and it's onto those bosses. Now it's up to me as a designer to determine, okay, is that acceptable? Is it still gonna break on those bosses? You know, the stress is still maybe outside of an acceptable range, but it's away from where we had it originally. But that's really the job as the designer, to be able to go through that, get the impact of those changes, you know, right in front of me. You know, if I want to go back, you know, not just add in a new feature, maybe modify a feature. So here we have some dimensions that we're driving, my initial points that we put those user-defined features down onto. Instead of 30, I want them to be 35 off from the center. As soon as I make that change, it's going to update my simulation. Go back to my deformation. Let's see if this is a little more acceptable. Go back over to my von Mises stress. Maybe this is more acceptable. Again, be able to just explore those ideas very quickly and get the most up-to-date information on that simulation as fast as possible. So that is Creo Simulation Live. Now, just a quick recap on what we saw there. The whole goal is just to be able to get simulation capabilities in the hands of every engineer as they go through those early design process. Maybe you still want to be able to send off your design critical components to that master analyst, that expert PhD level analyst that will be able to verify that the design works. But the whole goal is to be able to get them over something that might go on the first pass, might go on the second pass, and be able to require the least amount of rework possible. and allow me to go through the design process as the engineer with a really good idea of the analysis in mind. They're no longer really separate realms. Design with the analysis in mind and get my product out faster at a higher quality. Now, as I said, I just want to go over the hardware requirements. So just so that this is clear, it does require a special NVIDIA CUDA graphics card, minimum 4 gigabytes of RAM, optimal, of course, to have more of that. There are various different types of graphics cards that they have that will support that. So here's just a few of them down here, as well as some of the different workstations that would actually be able to have those bundled in, at purchase. But that's really the only requirement, is that graphics card to be able to run this, since it does run on the graphics card as opposed to running on the CPU. Now, for the actual release of this is not currently out yet. It is going into its focus beta in December of 2018. So within a month, I believe it's actually December 16th or December 18th of December this will be coming out. And this will actually, there's a few different ways to get enrolled with that. I'm sure your friendly sales reps here at MRC can help you get hooked up with that as well if you're interested in that. But the whole goal here is to gain some feedback from user testing that might be using this Creo simulation live and to prepare for the production release of it. And Creo, it's going to come out with Creo 4, Creo 5, and Creo 6 at different months that it's going to release there. So beta in Q4, and then Q2 for the 4, 5, and 6 that are coming out in separate months.